Now it brings me great pleasure to introduce this year's commencement speaker, Helen Molesworth. Helen is a curator, a writer, an activist, and a fierce advocate for artists. She has been bringing groundbreaking work to a broad public and redefining what arts can be in our or any time. Helen's journey as a curator has taken her to the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Wexner Center for the Arts, the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Harvard Art Museum, the Institute of Contemporary Art Boston, and most recently to the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Los Angeles, where she served as chief curator from 2014 to 2018. Throughout her celebrated curatorial career, Helen has exemplified unyielding passion, clarity, and forward-thinking vision. Bold in her convictions, she has consistently presented visionary, radical exhibitions that often bring the work of essential artists into the public's view in significant ways and sometimes for the very first time. Helen is known for forging unexpected and important collaborations between institutions that might otherwise not have happened, such as when she established a partnership between the Underground Museum and MoCA in 2015 to bring MoCA's archives to life in the unexpected community of Arlington Heights here in Los Angeles. Many of you may very well have seen Helen's ambitious exhibition, Leap Before You Look, Black Mountain College, 1933 to 57, when it traveled to our Hammer Museum here in 2016 as the first comprehensive U.S. museum exhibition about an experimental liberal arts college where influential artists like Robert Rauschenberg, Joseph and Annie Albers, John Cage, and Merce Cunningham, amongst others, were brought forward and shared with wide public audiences. Helen is the recipient of the 2011 Bard Center for Curatorial Studies Award for Curatorial Excellence, and she is currently working on an exhibition inspired by the American painter and film critic Manny Farber. And lucky for us most of all, this fall, Helen will be teaching a class here in the Department of Art. Throughout her career, Helen has expressed an uncompromising ethic and engagement with the world around us in every facet of her work and thinking. For this reason alone, I can think of no one better to address you all on the occasion of your 2018 commencement. And so with no further ado, please help me welcome Helen Molesworth.
Thank you, Dean Steele, for the invitation to speak today, to the UCLA faculty and staff, to the families and friends of the students gathered here today. I know it sounds cliche, but it really is an honor to stand before you this afternoon. First things first, I want to offer the graduating class of 2018 of the School of Arts and Architecture some big-time congratulations. The word congratulations has two Latin roots. The first is to wish joy, and the second is to be together. It gives me such pleasure to be together today with you and wish you joy. Congratulations. So, the task of the commencement speaker is to send you into the world with some pearls of wisdom before you start your so-called real life. But I confess I wonder what knowledge I possess that could be useful for you. You for whom the internet always existed. You for whom gay marriage and marijuana are legal. Neither were legal when I was in college, pretty much a petty criminal by the time of my graduation. You who witnessed the first Black president as an everyday reality rather than an impossible dream. You who saw the Twin Towers fall as children. What can I possibly say to equip you, not for the journey you are about to begin, but the journey that you are already on? So I've decided to tell you how hopeful I am about the future. And one of the reasons I am hopeful is because of your generation. You guys have come of age against an extraordinary backdrop of actual and symbolic change. From the two-term Obama presidency that shapes your sense of political possibility, to new ideas in the workplace symbolized by the Me Too and Time's Up movements, to your generation's acceptance of trans identities, to the bravery of those of you with DACA status, to your support of the water protectors at Standing Rock, to new ideas about race and power exemplified by Black Lives Matter, and now there are those following in your footsteps. High school students across the country, led by their peers from Parkland, calling for an end to gun violence. These are huge advances in the realm of everyday life, and you have already helped to shape these changes. But even though I am hopeful, it would be foolish not to mention how spectacularly messed up the world is at the moment. Both here and abroad, democracy finds itself imperiled by the all too familiar winds of authoritarianism and nationalism. And in our country, the difficult task of democracy is under enormous pressure from a newer threat, an increasingly powerful oligarchy that has concentrated more money in the hands of fewer individuals than the feudal period. This oligarchy has inserted its values of profit and their inherent belief in money and wealth as the ultimate metrics of success into democracy's most fundamental institutions, the press, scientific research, concert halls, the university, museums, all institutions that were previously believed to stand apart from the forces of the market. The worlds of culture and art, the worlds you are poised to enter, are striated with the pressure of these moneyed forces in ways we have never before encountered. And yet I find these times as joyful as they are scary. And one reason for my joy is my ability to address you, the next generation of artists and cultural thinkers, as the folks who have, as the bedrock of your pedagogical experience, the crit. The crit, for those of you in the back rows, maybe unfamiliar with the term, is short for the word critique. And it is a classroom exercise in which an artist shows her work to her teachers and fellow students, and everyone is at liberty to say what they think. The crit is unique to teaching in the arts, and it happens in writing, art, design, and architecture. The crit teaches students how to present their work and share their intentions and their process. And many people think that the primary value of the crit is that it teaches the student presenting her work to be as good as talking about her work as she is as making it. But I want to suggest that you were learning something else in the crit. You were learning how to listen. When you sat in a crit, you weren't simply learning to wait your turn before you spoke. Some of you were learning how to listen to what was being said as well as what wasn't being said. You were learning to listen carefully to people's choice of words, learning to listen for the emotional content of a statement as well as its factual one. You were learning to listen as a way to slow down the formation of your own opinion. You learned it was better to listen to what happened in the crit before you made your mind up about what you thought about the work. You were learning how to listen with compassion and ambivalence. In other words, you were learning how to listen to the complexity and the nuance of the crit itself. I want to be clear, not everybody learns how to do this. While you were learning to make and talk about art, you were also learning how to listen. I can think of no other time when it has been this important to be a very, very good listener. The composer John Cage suggested that listening would be our greatest virtue when he wrote his famous composition, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, a piece for piano where the performer goes to the stage, walks up to the piano, lifts the lid of the piano, and sits with his hands in his lap. They sit motionless for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Audiences rebelled when they first heard this piece. They were incensed that they were not being entertained by the artist. But Cage was asking the audience to listen differently. He was showing them that there is no such thing as silence. There is always sound. It is the ear that must be trained. We must learn to listen as much as we learn to speak. This is what Parkland High School student Emma Gonzalez did when she stood silent for 4 minutes before an assembly of tens of thousands of people to protest gun violence in the United States. She was refusing to lead us or entertain us with her grief. She was asking us instead to listen to ourselves, to each other, to the situation. Those of us who have been in a crit know that one of the most interesting questions we can ask ourselves right now is, what did we hear when Emma Gonzalez stopped speaking? Don't get me wrong, I know it's actually really hard to listen, but I'm pretty convinced that it's the only way towards change. Listening is the basis of empathy, and empathy is the only way to think our way out of the stranglehold of the debilitating and outmoded forms of thought we have inherited from our colonial past. It's inspiring to stand in front of you today because you guys already have a leg up. Because of the crit, you guys already know that listening helps you learn that every choice you make has meaning. You know from listening to others that meaning is not made individually, but collectively. In other words, you know how to be a citizen. I think your generation is the first generation to come of age when we can say that white supremacy is dying. In my entire life, I have never heard so many people from so many different walks of life be able to name and acknowledge the disaster visited upon us. And I know in my heart of hearts that some of the most important voices who have helped us understand how the past has shaped us have been artists and musicians and dancers and writers and architects, for they were listening and they have been reporting back to us about what they heard. But the capacity to identify and name the problem is only half the battle. There will be a long and hard fight ahead. People in power have a lot to lose, for their very sense of self is bound up in fantasies of whiteness and money and power. And yet, what I hear in the daily barrage of bad news is not strength, but weakness. What I hear in this current administration's culture of lying, bullying, hatred, and violence is not power, but a death rattle. Indeed, I think we are bearing witness to the death rattle of our colonial past. And like all deaths from toxic diseases, it will not be an easy or graceful one. The patient is fighting the diagnosis, fighting the reality of our country's new demographics so beautifully on display here today. Yet I believe Martin Luther King when he said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but that it bends ever so slightly toward justice. We are on the downward slope of that long arc now. Now is the time to consider listening an active skill rather than a passive activity. Now is the time to listen to those who have not been in power. Now is the time to listen to the myriad ways people talk, think, and feel. Now is the time we make sure to listen to the words, the feelings, and the silences of the many rather than the few. Can you imagine what our lives would be like if we had listened to Native peoples? If we had listened to the centuries of women denied formal education? If we were listening to the migrants crossing our borders? Now is the time for the artists who founded Black Lives Matter, for the artists who founded Time's Up, for the young drama students at Parkland, and you guys, the assembled artists sitting before me today, to bring your very special listening skills to bear on this extraordinary time of change. I selfishly cannot wait to reap the benefits of how your generation will listen, and my faith in your ability to listen brings me back to my congratulations to this act of gathering and wishing one another well. For being together and expressing our thoughts and feelings is what art is all about, and it is also the imperative work of democracy itself. All right, so I looked up lots of graduation speeches on the web, and you're supposed to offer some advice. So this is now the 5 pieces of very concrete advice I'm going to offer you. 1, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so technically it should be twice as easy to listen as it is to talk. 2, stick close to your friends over the years ahead. Look around at each other now, smile, dap your friends, kiss your lovers. Life is long, and you are all going to need each other. 3, make your bed. I know that that's a very Oprah-like thing to say, and I have no idea what it has to do with white supremacy, but I also know that making your bed is one of those things that makes you a more productive person, and I don't know why that is, but you should just do it. Trust me, make your bed. 4, if you are lucky enough to enjoy prosperity, remember to share it. Don't stockpile power and money. If they come your way, redistribute them. Share the joys of your successes widely. And 5, most of all, please remember that love remains our greatest attribute. Our capacity for love is infinite. The more love we make, the more we receive. The more we receive, the more we can give away, and so on, and so on, and so on. Congratulations.